This video is brought to you by my patrons, my thoughts and opinions, Taylor Swift, and conservatives being weird about normal things. Hi, and welcome to, or back to, my channel where I talk about whatever catches my attention. I'm Kit, and in August 2025, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got engaged, and conservatives got weird. And, well, it caught my attention. We have a variety show on deck today, so grab a drink and some popcorn, and let's get into it.
Taylor Swift just got engaged, and I think this is a really good reminder that even the biggest feminists really do like marriage. Deep down, it's just that the whole I don't need no man mentality is usually just because you haven't had the right man in your life to ask you to spend the rest of his life with you. Most women want to be asked to get married. We want to be protected. We want strong men in our life because marriage is good. Masculinity is good, okay? Both those things you should desire and want. All it takes for the whole I hate the patriarchy and all men mentality to just like fly out the window is for a good, strong man to ask you to marry him.
Can someone tell me what Taylor Swift has said or done that makes her the biggest feminist? There is the song The Man, but for someone of her wealth and fame, that's really kind of nothing. Also, if feminism, as this person describes, is about an I don't need no man mentality, how did Taylor, the biggest feminist according to this person, end up in multiple romantic relationships with men before becoming engaged to Travis? Also, maybe it's not about liking marriage, but wanting to commit to someone you love. If it was about just wanting to be married in general, Taylor probably would have done this years ago. Just a thought. Anyway, now we have Brett Cooper who posted the video, Taylor Swift just broke the internet, an emergency episode of her show because she has some reasons we, and this includes you fellas, need to care about their engagement. I have to say, I didn't think Brett was a Swiftie, but you really never know.
Also, I do think that this speaks to a broader conversation about love and marriage in 2025, specifically on the topic of forever boyfriends, because Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift just got engaged after 2 years of dating, and that might seem like normal in the grand scheme of things, but in 2025, when you go on social media and you see girls that have been with their boyfriends for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, that are still waiting on an engagement, that are these like forever girlfriends, this kind of relationship can seem like an anomaly. And Taylor Swift basically just blew up that entire idea that you have to be a forever girlfriend in order to get the ring.
Brett does note Taylor's previous relationship with Joe Alwyn, which lasted 6 years, but this is so weird to me. People know they don't have to wait a decade or however long to get engaged or married. What they do or don't decide to do, what they do or don't settle for. I don't think they need Taylor Swift to know that they can get engaged, they can get married, they don't have to be boyfriend-girlfriend forever.
I don't know if there are any hard studies on this. I don't think that there are, but celebrity relationships and celebrity marriages play a huge role in the cultural tone of an era. Like, think about David Beckham and Victoria Beckham and their wedding. Think about, Princess Kate and Prince William and their wedding. That was huge. The royal wedding was talked about for years. Just, a couple of years ago, we had Sophia Richie's wedding, which basically made so many women, decide that they wanted to get married and have kids, that they wanted to stop dressing like hoes and be classy. She ushered in this quiet, luxury, modest type of fashion. These relationships, these weddings, these marriages, they have the power to change culture. And if you think that Taylor Swift getting married, being engaged, being in a long-term relationship is not going to do that, I don't know what to tell you. This is the end-all be-all for women around the world right now. I was about to say women in America, but really around the world right now. And you might think that this is kind of ridiculous, but she is signaling that marriage is something to strive for, that love is worth seeking out, that you should wait for an amazing guy, that you should, follow that institution, and seek that commitment, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
This is a common theme. Now that Taylor Swift is engaged, other women will want to be as well. And for all the culture shifts previous weddings and such have caused, at least per these folks, that still hasn't stopped folks like Brett from shaming how women dress and bemoaning how women just aren't marrying. And I do find it interesting that Brett is encouraging women to wait until they can find that love. But then I never thought Brett was a you must marry young type of conservative, even though that's what she did. Which I will say is a change. A lot of the tradcons lecturing teens and 20-somethings about how they must marry and have kids ASAP are single in or near their 30s. And there's nothing wrong with being single with no kids at any age, but when your livelihood is telling others that's what they must do for fulfillment and happiness, there's a disconnect.
And also, it just has to be said, For the guys online who say that women like hit a wall at 28 years old, who say you're never gonna have kids after 28 or 30, you're never gonna have any prospects, you're never gonna get married, come on. Taylor Swift just got engaged at 35 years old. She is at the top of her career. She is so happy. She is succeeding. She is thriving. She is stunning. She's not hit the wall. So if you are not engaged or married by 28 or 30 or 35, just know you've not hit the wall. It is not too late. This is always something to strive for. Love is something that you should seek out. You should find a good man. You should find a good woman. And you should not be red-pilled by people on the internet. Black-pilled by people on the internet. So that's my message for you today.
See, I can agree with conservatives sometimes, though I would add the caveat that you should seek love if you want to. Friendship is important as well. Anyway, from here we go to Reagan Conrad, Brett's replacement on the Daily Wire's The Comment section, who posted, Taylor Swift is no longer a forever girlfriend, with a thumbnail, the internet is freaking out.
But what I want to dive into is that the fact that this woman is undoubtedly the most influential woman in the Western world, if not the globe. And her dating life specifically influences and affects the attitudes of millions of women around the world, for better or for worse. If you don't believe me, if you don't understand the true power, just think of this. Okay, Taylor Swift writes an incredible breakup song. And then as a result, you have millions of married, happy mothers screaming the lyrics about breaking up with their man because that's what Taylor was doing. And there's always TikToks about that trend and jokes from women saying, reminding themselves that they are in happy, healthy relationships after listening to a Taylor Swift song because the lyrics and Taylor were always the opposite of that. So you'd have to come, you have to turn off the song and be like, okay, well, I can actually relate to that because I'm in a happy, healthy relationship.
Well, you can be in a happy, healthy relationship now, but not in the past, which is what a song reminds you of. But anyway, Reagan can't seriously believe that happily married women were planning divorce because Taylor Swift wrote a breakup song. There's a lot of reasons people get divorced. Taylor Swift is not one of them. Anyway, can I just ask?
She became a loud vocal feminist.
When was Taylor Swift a loud vocal feminist? I remember her Harris endorsement and again her song The Man, but is that seriously it? I'm starting to think it's just remaining unmarried into her 30s that makes people think she's a feminist. Anyway, Reagan also says Taylor made all the money, girl bossed all the way to the sun, and bought all the cats her heart could desire. Wait. I thought all these things were supposed to be turnoffs to men. Women making billions and having a successful career, women being over 25, women being feminists, women having cats. I've been told in no uncertain terms by red pillars, religious folks, and tradcons that men do not like those things in women. It's almost as though who you are as a person matters and you can be successful and have self-esteem and still be loved. Wow. Anyway, let's get a little weird.
More importantly, even though for those decades she has been seen as the queen of relationship drama and breakups and situationships, she still saw marriage and a monogamous commitment as the end goal.
Taylor Swift has been in multiple long-term relationships over the years. I'm pretty sure marriage and commitment was her end goal most, if not all, of the time.
And though I don't align with her politically or theologically in a lot of ways, this is a moment worth celebrating. Because as you saw earlier from the crazy corporate America women, she has such a heavy influence on young women. So hopefully this will also encourage women to desire marriage and commitment and to not be so fearful and defiant toward it, which has become the sentiment over the years.
Despite what people might post on TikTok, most people still marry and have kids. And that is why I was not surprised when Taylor Swift got engaged. It's just something people do. Anyway, Reagan predicts a marriage boom because of this, and I don't. But if Taylor's wedding dress becomes public knowledge, I can, however, see a TS replica dress boom.
It gave hope to millions of jaded women. I also think the idea of settling down sometimes scares people in our modern age, especially given the fact that it almost feels like there is this limitless pool of options at our fingertips, even though those are not actually viable or attainable. But Taylor has those options, and she has the money and the fame, and she also has experienced a lot of heartbreak and experienced divorce within her own family. So why does she, of all the feminist girl boss powerhouses, still see a value and a desire for marriage? After having anything she could possibly want, why does she still want a husband? Why is that the thing that she always says, I don't even need the money, I just want someone? Why?
I have wanted to get married approximately once, and it was a while ago, but from memory, I wanted to do it because I was in love with that person and wanted to entangle our lives together in some measurable way. I don't know Taylor, of course, but I imagine it's something like that. Of course, Reagan has her own response.
Because good husbands are an absolute light of a lifetime. They are priceless. They add more fulfillment to a woman's life than any worldly success ever could. And this is proof of that. All along, even with her growing success, her goal to find a life partner has always been as clear as day in her music. It's almost like men and women are designed to become one, not just biologically, but also spiritually.
Personally, I do find relationships, and that includes friendship, more fulfilling than money or career, so I was with her until she started doing that weird become one stuff. We are not the ooze, Reagan, and you don't have to become one to really love someone. But at least she stopped there and didn't go on to discuss how Taylor has to submit because she's not in charge and change her name, otherwise she doesn't mean it. Anyway, Conservative Cosmo, aka EV Magazine, also had some thoughts on this. Enough for a whole article. Let's read. This was not just a celebrity headline, nor simply a romantic gesture between two famous people. I am taking this very seriously, I hope you can tell. It was a cultural moment, one that revealed what both the left and the right crave. How did this become political? What we have lost, and what we still dare to hope for. Our era is one of cynicism. Politically, culturally, spiritually, skepticism reigns. We've learned to expect betrayal from leaders, disillusionment from institutions, and impermanence in personal life. Even our entertainment mirrors this. Reality television thrives on dysfunction, pop music often glorifies toxic relationships, and social media teaches us to romanticize heartbreak over healing. Then, I'm making myself laugh. Then came a moment of clarity. When Swift and Kelce announced their engagement, it felt like a reprieve. A pause in the chaos, a chance to look at something simple and good. This wasn't just about a ring. It was about a cultural hunger being fed. I'm sorry, it's just so dramatic. Part of the impact lies in the symbolism. Swift, the artist, poetic, emotive, introspective, has built her career on capturing the highs and lows of relationships. Kelce, the athlete, physical and strong, represents another archetype altogether. Together, they embody two halves of the American story: art and sport, sensitivity and strength, the pen and the playbook. The pen and the playbook are two halves of the American story? Okay. For decades, Americans have lamented the loss of our shared stories, the cultural moments that unite rather than divide us. This engagement became one of those moments. Even if briefly, it commanded the attention of millions across political, generational, and cultural lines. I feel like there might be some exaggerating going on here, but whatever. What makes this engagement particularly striking is how each side of the political spectrum can see themselves reflected in it. For the record, I do not see myself reflected in strangers' private moments. For the left, Taylor Swift has long been a cultural heroine. She is celebrated as a feminist figure, citation needed, praised for her independence, okay, maybe, and her willingness to channel personal heartbreak into artistic triumph, okay. Her engagement complicates that narrative in the best way possible. How? Was anyone honestly surprised that, like most people, Taylor Swift got engaged? And was anyone surprised that someone who writes about love is engaged to be married? It's been pretty obvious that this is what she wants the whole time. I don't think those previous relationships were just fodder for albums. I think she was genuinely trying to find a partner. Rather than diminishing her independence, it shows that even the most self-sufficient woman can choose commitment without losing herself. Has anyone checked in with the tradcon men about that? Marriage, in this light, becomes not a regression but a culmination, a declaration that strength and vulnerability are not opposites but partners. For the right, Kelce represents a form of masculinity that is increasingly rare in public life. Unapologetic, physical, protective. The union of Swift and Kelce looks, someone takes themselves way too seriously. To conservativize, like a validation of timeless truths. Even America's biggest pop star, known for her witty one-liners' progressive appeal, has chosen not a fleeting entanglement or an ironic rejection of tradition, but the permanence of marriage with a man who embodies old-school masculinity. It is a subtle vindication of tradition, family, and permanence. And yet, crucially, this is not a story that divides. Unlike so many cultural moments, it does not split neatly into left and right. You know, some people they don't look at everything and see a political thing in there. I'm just saying, it never occurred to my mind that there was a left or right thing when Taylor Swift got engaged. Okay. Each side sees what it wants to see. Perhaps that is what makes a story powerful. It reveals that, beneath our differences, Americans still share a longing for stories of devotion, stories of permanence, stories that suggest we are not doomed to disappointment forever. Perhaps the most profound cultural impact of Swift's engagement lies in what it signals for women and for our storytelling. For nearly 2 decades, Taylor Swift's music has been the soundtrack of heartbreak. Her songs catalog betrayal, disappointment, and the cycles of falling for men who could not love her well. In many ways, she mirrored the broader cultural ethos, a world that glamorizes toxic love, celebrates the antihero, and teaches young women that empowerment is found in pain rather than peace. How does that work? I definitely don't feel empowered when I'm in pain. In fact, that's one of the last things I'm thinking about. But this engagement marks a new chapter. Swift has allowed herself not just to chronicle heartbreak, but to embrace hope. In doing so, she gives permission to her audience, millions of women, to daydream about love again. I'm pretty sure women weren't waiting for Taylor Swift's permission to daydream about love. Not the fleeting, chaotic kind, but the durable, committed kind. That shift matters. We live in a time when marriage rates are declining, when hookup culture is normalized, when the word forever feels almost naive. Yet here is the most influential woman in music, the defining voice of a generation, choosing permanence over transience, choosing marriage over endless reinvention, choosing, in short, to be loved well. This is countercultural. Counterculture is going against social norms. Getting married isn't countercultural when most people get married. It suggests that tradition is not a cage, but a form of rebellion in a culture bent on disorder. Swift's engagement dignifies marriage as something aspirational, not antiquated. It reframes commitment as the radical act. And it comes in a moment when America is desperate for precisely this kind of story. We are weary of irony, of heartbreak turned into performance art, of chaos as entertainment. We are ready for stories that steady us. Stories that honor love as something worth preserving. Taylor Swift's engagement to Travis Kelce is, of course, personal to them, but culturally it is so much more. It is a mirror of what America is still capable of desiring, not just fame or spectacle, but devotion and dignity. It shows us that tradition can still captivate, that love can still move millions across divides, and that in a weary, cynical age, we still hunger for hope. For conservatives, it is proof that the gravitational pull of permanence is inescapable. For progressives, it is proof that even icons of independence can find empowerment in commitment. Not everything people do is about being empowered, and also, people who identify as progressive, they don't think that you're some might, but as a general rule, being progressive doesn't mean that commitment is a bad word or a bad thing. And for all of us, it is a reminder that love is not meant to end in chaos, but to endure. When we choose it, we build families and communities, the very things that carry a civilization forward. That is a lot to read into something that happens every day. And I have to say, banking so much on this engagement makes me a bit uneasy. What happens if things don't go well? Are they going to start bemoaning a divorce boom? Will they blame Taylor Swift for that? This is not me wishing unhappiness on Travis and Taylor. Just all these predictions of a marriage and baby boom strike me as a bit giddy, premature, weird. Anyway, to even things out, I'll close with an article by Amanda Marcotte for Salon. Taylor Swift is not the trad wife you're looking for. MAGA influencers can't be normal about anything. She notes the normal ways to take the news, and then there was how MAGA pundits and influencers responded. By praying this would be the end of the alleged embargo on marriage being imposed by feminism-poisoned women. Young women should get married just like Taylor Swift is planning to. You will be happier, scolded Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Points USA. At 35, Swift is 6 years older than the average bride in the US. I hope many other single people follow their example, the Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro tutted. Popular far-right commenters, who often have their own millions of followers, latched onto this engagement like joy-killing leeches with dreary comments about how Taylor is a role model for many who could benefit from seeing a happily married couple. Of course, Christian nationalist types had to weigh in too, with statements like, I hope Taylor Swift's engagement inspires young women to see the joy and purpose in getting married. Right-wing sociology professor Brad Wilcox tweeted, expect a spike in marriage, which, in a sane world, would be the end of his reputation as a legitimate academic. What none of these fools offered, however, was a single shred of evidence that young women are deliberately avoiding marriage, much less that Swift herself was somehow discouraging it. I sometimes DJ at weddings, and I can assure you that Swift's music always gets the celebrants dancing. Yes, it's true that marriage rates have declined somewhat in recent decades, although there was a boost in 2022 as weddings delayed by the pandemic finally happened. It's also true that, on average, women prioritize getting married less than men and are more willing to say they are happy with being single. But none of this is because women are categorically rejecting men or marriage. Time and again, surveys show women are open to falling in love and getting married, if the right person comes along. It's flat out false that feminists are encouraging young women to turn their noses up at good men. Nor is it true that women are rejecting marriage as an institution. If anything, it's a sign of how much women respect marriage that they don't want to enter it lightly. The only thing that's changed is that, due to increased educational and career opportunities, women can hold out for love instead of settling for an unhappy union out of financial desperation. For people who claim to want marriages to be healthy and happy, that should be a good thing. Instead, MAGA apostles do nothing but gripe about women who have enough self-worth to wait for a man, another woman would, of course, be out of the question, who respects them. What's funny is that Swift and Kelce offer the feminist dream that young women want. Swift is the opposite of the trad wife fantasy that's popular on the right, a woman who marries young and leaves public life for a life of constant childbearing and financial dependence on her husband. Is there any doubt that Taylor Swift will continue to work after she marries? For his part, Kelce is an almost too perfect model of what feminists want in male partners. He's not resentful of his fiance's success or independence. On the contrary, he is loudly proud of her and her accomplishments, so much so that she announced her upcoming album on his podcast. If these conservative commentators were really serious about boosting marriage rates, they'd worry less about lecturing women and instead tell their majority male audiences to be more like Kelce, supportive and self-sufficient. As Anna Louise Sussman wrote in the New York Times in 2023, it's men, on average, who are failing to hold it together enough to make marriage work, not women. Research shows men are more likely to be unreliable partners, both economically and emotionally. Women should not have to settle for men who cheat on them or abandon, abuse, or exploit them in unequal relationships. That there aren't enough men out there to meet that bare minimum is not the fault of women. As feminist writer Liz Lenz wrote at Men Yell at Me, the fantasy that Swift and Kelce are selling isn't romance, it's not even equality. It's a fantasy world where a woman can be successful and her partner will be mad about it. The women who were crying or otherwise expressing heavy emotions at the news of the couple's engagement weren't suddenly deciding they were okay with marriage after all. They were feeling overwhelmed by how badly they want a decent marriage and frustrated by how elusive such a thing can be. But there's no money to be had telling men to grow up already. On the contrary, grifters like Kirk and Shapiro have built large audiences by pandering to the egos of pathetic men, telling them the reason they're single is those meanie feminists have tricked all the hot girls into boycotting romance. Kirk in particular revealed the almost breathtaking contempt he has for his incel-infected audience by rolling out this fantasy for them on his podcast that the presence of a wedding ring would somehow erase Swift's feminism. Marriage, he assured his audience, will change your politics, and he speculated that Swift would go from a cat lady to a J.D. Vance supporter. He then advised the pop star, who is definitely not listening, to submit to your husband, Taylor, you're not in charge. This is all nonsense, and not just because Swift isn't giving up her cats. It's unlikely that Kirk is deluded enough to think that Swift has any intention of hanging up her guitar to play housewife to a man who, at 35, is facing retirement from a career that has a much shorter shelf life than a musician's. Instead, Kirk is cynically manipulating his male audience. If these guys shaped up and started treating women better, they might find that their relationships would be more successful. If more men stopped wallowing in fantasies of capturing submissive trad wives, and learn to just appreciate women as full human beings, that would be great not just for those guys, but also for society. That simple change in mindset would reduce loneliness and increase stability, which conservatives say they want. But then it would also lessen polarization and alienation, which is what MAGA influencers depend on to build their audiences. That's their game. Right-wing pundits encourage self-harm in their audiences, and they laugh all the way to the bank while doing it. And yes, it's also true that Swift makes money by packaging her life as entertainment, but she's earning bank by sending a message of self-respect to her audience. In a world where it seems everything seems grosser and scammier all the time, we should be glad there's at least one star who is doing well by selling positivity. That, and not tradition, is why normal people are wishing the happy couple well. So, final thoughts. I did hear about the engagement at work. No one screamed or cried or fainted, and I didn't think anything of it until I began seeing the reactions of conservatives online. They read things into this that I never thought of. And I know they're really into grievance culture, hence the need to pretend that the things they like, marriage, having kids, are not things society is doing even, well, when society is doing them. But wow, this sure was something. Anyway, I wish them well, and I hope this serves as confirmation for any girl or young woman who has come across the tradcons of the world that they do have value after age 25, and they don't have to say yes to the first guy that asks. All that being said, is Alex Clark going to get married now? She's a major Swiftie. Was this what she was waiting for? And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.